Okay, it is time for our fortnightly federal political debate. Representing the Liberal Party, the member for Higgins, Kelly O'Dwyer. Kelly, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tom.
And in the wilds of Geelong, the member for Corio and Shadow Minister for Immigration, the iron fist in the velvet glove, Richard Marles. Hello to you.
Afternoon, Tom. How are you?
Good, thank you. Now, spying has been on the top of many people's agendas this week. The Indonesians are almost getting ready to declare war on Australia. They've been burning our flag, picketing our embassy. Of course, the spying that allegedly occurred back in October 2009. Who's to blame here? You, Richard?
Well, I don't think. Actually, I think the answer to that ultimately is Edward Snowden. If you're looking for a culprit here, that's who we should be pointing the finger at. I think there is nothing laudable in what Edward Snowden has done in really putting in place a situation which makes relationships, which has created difficulties in what are really important relationships around the globe. Firstly, between the US and Germany. And obviously he has created an awkward moment for the relationship between Australia and Indonesia. So if you're looking to point the finger at anyone, it's there. In terms of the actual allegations that are being made, I think it's really important that, and this is what's been happening, so it's good that politicians on both sides of the fence stick to the tried and true formula of not commenting about intelligence matters. It's actually a very important thing that we do that.
So a rule that you've just broken by talking about it there, Richard.
I haven't talked about it in that sense.
I know. What about now, Kelly O'Dwyer? What about what the leader of the opposition, Bill Shorten, Richard Marles' boss, had to say? He said, "We're at one on this. We're all Team Australia." Now, I don't know if you've seen a rather funny film with marionettes called Team America World Police.
I have, Tom, I have.
Is Bill Shorten channeling Team Australia here?
Well, look, I agree with Bill Shorten's line. We do need to take a Team Australia approach, and I agree with everything that Richard has had to say on this issue. We need to act in Australia's national interest and engage.
So we keep spying on the Indonesians?
Well, no, engaging in megaphone diplomacy is not acting in Australia's national interest.
Well, who's doing that?
Well, I think people who want to seek a lot of commentary on this want us to engage in megaphone diplomacy, and that's not something that we have said that we would engage in. What we have said is that we will respond to the Indonesian president's letter, and the Prime Minister has said he will do that very swiftly, and he will do that fully and frankly.
I have a theory that you can both comment on this, that President Yudhoyono is secretly quite pleased about all this. In fact, he's probably encouraging Tony Abbott to keep going the way he is, that the more Australia appears the bad guy, the better the Indonesian president looks. Just quickly, there has been another wicket. Tremlett is out. England now 9 for 110. Their innings can't be far off. What do you think about that, though, Kelly? I mean, is Mr Yudhoyono actually pretty pleased about what's going on?
I think Indonesia wants a very good, warm and close relationship with Australia, as we do with them. Tony Abbott said when he was wanting to become Prime Minister before the election that Indonesia is one of our most important relationships, and that's why he prioritised a visit to Indonesia when he became Prime Minister, that it was going to be his first trip overseas. He honoured that promise because it is such an important relationship to us.
Has he never been overseas before?
No. He said it was going to be his first trip as Prime Minister overseas. Would be to visit Indonesia. And that's what he did. He took a very high-powered delegation with him of business leaders. I think that was a very appropriate thing to do.
It has been sort of overtaken, though, now, hasn't it?
Well, we engage with Indonesia on a number of levels. We have a close relationship with Indonesia. We're obviously working through a difficult period at the moment, and we've outlined how we're doing that. But we can have a very warm, cordial, close relationship with Indonesia. We have done in the past. When there was the tsunami, Australia, of course, was the first to offer assistance, including financial assistance. With the Asian financial crisis, we gave loans to Indonesia. We have been a very good friend to Indonesia, and we will continue to be a very good friend to Indonesia.
Now, Richard, you're the one of the many hats you wear is Shadow Minister for Immigration. The Indonesians have said they're going to suspend cooperation when it comes to people smuggling. Will that make our job more difficult?
Well, let's see how that all plays out. There's no doubt that cooperation with Indonesia is central to our efforts in relation to dealing with people smuggling, and it's just common sense that for us to make progress on this issue as a country, we need to have a very close and cooperative relationship with Indonesia. And the truth is that we have, amongst all the things that Kelly correctly articulated then in terms of the degree of cooperation there has been between Australia and Indonesia over the years. Cooperation in relation to people smuggling has been very very much front and centre in that list as well. So it is important that we are able to continue cooperating with them. Obviously, we would like to get a sense from the government about where that is at, given what has been said in the last few days. But I think we need to let this play out a bit and just see exactly what is and isn't affected in the context of the circumstances of the last few days.
Well, it sounds to me as though the two of you are in furious agreement on this one. What about something on which you disagree? Very quickly, the carbon tax. It's been abolished, at least in the House of Representatives this week. Now, Richard Marles, did you vote for or against the abolition?
Well, I'm not sure. I must say I got confused about...
You got confused in the Parliament?
We did, because there ended up being amendments moved, dissents moved in the chair. There's no doubt that our position was, and I was part of it, which was opposing the abolition of the carbon tax in circumstances where there is not a credible alternative being put forward, which will actually see a reduction in emissions. And I think if you want to get the take out of what's occurred this week, whilst the repeal of the carbon tax has passed the House of Representatives, what we are now is a step closer to the Coalition's direct action policy, and that's a policy which is going to cost Australians a whole lot more and is going to do much less in terms of reducing carbon emissions.
All right, Kelly O'Dwyer will tell us about the direct action policy in just a moment, and we'll take some calls if you'd like to ask Richard or Kelly a question. 96900 693 13 13 32. Cricket tragic Tony Tardio joins us now, the English people in...
Tom Elliott.
The English tail still wagging. England 9 for 119 as we speak. Kelly O'Dwyer and Richard Marles are with me. Just another thing, the two of you. I noticed that some of your more senior colleagues have some rather odd requirements when they go overseas. Now, Bob Carr, for reasons best known to himself, the former foreign minister, prefers a junior suite. That's probably to save money, which is good. But, Richard Marles, can you explain why he likes the hotel fridge emptied before he arrives? Is it because he doesn't trust himself with the drinks or something?
No, I can't. I can tell you...
what were your requests, Richard?
I'm not going into that, I assure you. But Bob is a very... he's a man who's very particular about his health, and I've got to say, for a 67-year-old, he is in fine physical condition. So he does like to have particular sorts of nuts that he eats, which give him the best nutritional value. But I have an enduring image of Bob. We were in New York for the UN Security Council vote. We both found ourselves in the gym first thing in the morning, but Bob was able to actually do weights while reading the New York Times at the same time, which said everything about Bob Carr.
Well, it says here that Bob Carr likes mineral water and unsalted almonds, pistachios and walnuts. Julie Bishop, I should say, the current Foreign Minister, also fairly frugal. When she goes away, amongst other things, Kelly O'Dwyer, she likes an iron and an ironing board. Doesn't she trust the hotel to do it?
Well, she is very frugal. In fact, she's no diva, Julie Bishop. When she goes away, she has basic accommodation. All she wants is the iron and the ironing board. She wants to get out there and do her job. She's not interested in all the little luxuries. And I know that there are very long lists when you actually have a look at the FOI information from some past foreign ministers and people who travel overseas on a regular basis on behalf of the government.
Let's go to some calls.
I wanted an iron and ironing board as well. I think that was on my list.
You always look immaculate there, Richard. Ashley, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. How are you going?
Good, thanks, Ashley.
That's the way. Yeah, I just was calling because I heard you asking Richard and Kelly who they thought was to blame for the whole spying revelation.
Yeah, who do you reckon?
And, well, I was just ringing up to suggest perhaps the ABC and the Guardian newspaper should be held to some account. I mean, the hypocrisy of the ABC, I mean... They felt that was compelling for the Australian public to know, but what was it, the following day or 2 days later, they got their knickers in a knot because the presenters' pay salaries were revealed.
No, actually, I thought that was very amusing, actually. They didn't want people to know how much money Tony Jones got, but they thought it was entirely appropriate that the tapping of phones be exposed to the public. Look, both Richard and Kelly, going back to this spying issue, isn't it really just a case of, we spy on lots of countries, I'm sure. Plenty of countries try and spy on us. This time it has been brought out into the public realm, and for reasons best known to themselves, there's the Indonesians are making something of it. But I mean, they're burning Australian flags at the moment. I mean, do we do nothing and hope that it all blows away, Richard?
Look, I think the thing to understand is that this is a curveball, if I can use that phrase, which has been thrown to both Australia and Indonesia together by Edward Snowden's revelations or his allegations. And I think it's really important that we keep this in that perspective. Your caller, I understand why the ABC and The Guardian make things public. I get what the media does, but I think what Edward Snowden has done in putting this into the public realm is really reprehensible. As for what it's worth, I think what Julian Assange did was really destructive in terms of the way in which countries relate to each other. And it is important that there is an ability for countries to talk to each other and to operate without being in the public domain. And I think that's what, we've got to bear that in mind.
Kelly, are you worried? I mean, there's a news report out today suggesting not only the cooperation on people smuggling will be suspended, but that Australian trade links, for example, selling cattle to the Indonesians, that will be affected too. I mean, is the government worried about all this?
Well, the government takes, obviously, our relationship with Indonesia very, very seriously, which is why we are engaging at the highest levels on a Prime Minister to President, level. This is something that we are taking very, very seriously.
What about Schapelle Corby? I mean, is she going to spend another 2 or 3 years in jail because of this?
Well, there's a lot of speculation, of course, but that's why it is being done in the most sensible and prudent way, in a way that takes a lot of the heat out of the discussions that I know are taking place and the speculation that's taking place. And that's why the Prime Minister himself is dealing with this issue with the President of Indonesia. That is appropriate, and it's appropriate that it be done out, I think, of the public spotlight.
So if I went and burnt an Indonesian flag in public, you'd advise me against that?
I'd be doing that.
Of course.
I'd be advising you against that, I mean.
But
exactly.
they're doing it to us.
Well, no, but I don't think anybody likes to see their flag being burnt, and I don't think anybody would actually condone that behaviour. You're not going to get Richard condoning it. I'm not going to condone it either.
I don't see the Indonesian police arresting people on the streets of Jakarta for doing it.
That's a matter for the Indonesians, of course, but I don't think you'll find anybody who condones that behaviour. We don't condone it here. We never like to see our flag burnt. That's not something that I think is a good thing. But unfortunately, in a free democracy, people are able to express themselves in ways that we might not always like.
Wayne, good afternoon. I'll just go to Wayne first. Good afternoon, Wayne.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good, thank you, Wayne.
I was just wondering whether you might be able to ask the hard question, which would be, why does Australia allow the Indonesian government to allow people smugglers to work out of Indonesian jails? And if the Indonesian Prime Minister says he's going to stop the people, not going to help with the people smugglers, it's going to make no difference because they're not helping us at the moment. There's a line of 100 people daily at the backs of the Indonesian jails going in, picking up Bahrain passports with Australian visas and putting them on the refugee boats and sending them out of Indonesia to Australia with the full cooperation of the Indonesian government.
Wayne, I agree. Look, just the other day we spoke about how 3 Indonesian naval officers had been either arrested or implicated in people smuggling. Richard, look, you're the Shadow Immigration Minister. Can we pressure the Indonesians more? Do you think Kelly's side of things could do a bit more to be tough with them?
The point I was going to make earlier, and it feeds into the answer to this question, is Alexander Downer has been making the point the last few days that of all the things we need to be doing, we need to be calm. And I think that is exactly right. I think it's really important that at every level, both at a government level but also within the media, we not overreact to what's going on. I would say there is and has been an enormous amount of cooperation between Australia and Indonesia when it comes to dealing with people smuggling. It is why it is such an important part of the relationship, and why I think, obviously, given the statements of Indonesia in the last few days, it is important that we get some sense from the government about where it's up to. But it's just not right to say that there is no effort being made on the Indonesian part in terms of dealing with people smuggling. And I can tell you, and I'm sure Kelly would agree, that there is, the level of cooperation has been almost organic. The customs departments, immigration departments, the Navy, police. It is a high degree of coordination, and it's important that people understand that.
We better leave it there. But Kelly, Richard, what I'm hearing from both of you is the old saying: we should keep calm and carry on.
Indeed, Tom.
Kelly O'Dwyer, Federal Member for Higgins, Richard Miles, Member for Corio. Thank you both for your time.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, just before we go to the break, I read out a news report before about a terrible accident in Rosedale in Gippsland. One child has been killed, another one badly injured. Neil Robertson joins us from the Channel 7 chopper. Neil, what's going on?
It's not a very nice scene. two cars, one of those four-door ute type trucks, and a red four-wheel drive by the look of it.